In this video, I'm going to do a demonstration of what measuring profit per customer could mean for your business. In organizations that I go into, revenue per customer is often measured, and if you look at your biggest client to your smallest client, the curve often looks like this. This is a 95-5 curve, but you might have an 80-20 or 60-40 type of curve. Customers often, or organizations often, are able to measure gross profit per customer. That's another measure. I'll show you why in the demo that can be misleading. What we try to advocate is profit per customer, and not standard cost profit, actual profit. And what we do is we set out to look for lining up your best customer to your worst customer, and we're trying to find the customers that earn you acceptable profits and more, and then those who are in between, so they're not making losses but they're not making great profits, and then you've got loss makers who are actually destroying value. And the typical questions that we would ask of those lost customers are they bad customers that need to be weeded out of your business because they're actually destroying value? Could they be strategic? They might be starting as loss makers, and you might have made that call and you're trying to migrate them to the left through the amber and the green. Perhaps you've got wrong pricing models. You're just not charging enough for the services you provide. Or you might have the wrong business models in place. So you're not servicing them properly. And the next point is related to that, is you're over-engineering the service, and it's actually costing you money. Or you've got inefficiencies within one or more departments within your business, and that's actually costing you money. And if you clean that up, perhaps those clients won't be loss makers. So what I've got in front of me is a dashboard. So all this data is fictitious data. It's the typical scenario that we see when we go into clients. The spread of data is very typical of what you see in the real world. And in fact, most clients that we work with, their data would look something like this. So in this example, I've got close to 1,500 customers. I've got revenue of $104 million. Gross profit of 44.7%. There's the overheads. I've got a profit of $12.4 million and a percentage profit of 9.9%. Now, if I look at this graph that we started in PowerPoint, I'll just expand it a little bit. So this is your typical curve. The blue line that you see is the profit. So that's actual profit. Again, not standard or gross profit. And the pink line is sales. So you can see you've got some really good clients. This one down here, for instance, is it's got lots of sales, but the profit isn't much greater than the customers to the left and right of it. So that's a little bit of a problem. But if I move my mouse right across to the end of the data, you'll see right at the end, and this is also very typical in most businesses, is you've got some clients that are actually destroying the value, even though the sales might be good. So in this case over here, you've got a data point of about $2.2 million. This one over here is close to $2 million, but again, loss makers. What you see on the right-hand side is a customer's profit by customer. So the size of the square is how much profit is being made. So this OGE Energy is making lots of profit, and they're green because they're above 20%. That's the threshold we just put into this model. If they're red, they're making less than 10% profit, actual profit. So if I click on this Cardinal Health, again, fictitious data, it's one customer with many branches and many maybe subsidiaries below them. So this is also quite typical, is that you might have a customer that's got 42 or 46 branches in this case, some of which are making acceptable profits and others are actually losing you money. And you might know that already, but it's good just to visualize that in this way. This graph at the bottom over here, what we've done is we've grouped customers who are making large profits in monetary terms, medium, negative, and small. So if you watch this number over here, 12.4 million, and I click on this number, large customers. So I've taken the data from 1,400 odd customers down to 56 customers. GPs look more or less the same, but look how the profit has jumped up from 12.4 million to 15.75 million. And the percentage profit has moved from 9.9% to 16.4%. Again, very typical that And what this is saying to an organization is, if we had to build our business around these 56 clients, and we remix the data, we remix the overheads, this is the kind of profit that we could get. So a much smaller business would be much more profitable. And the converse is also true. If we focus on the negative customers, there they are, and look at this, 10.78 million of revenue. Again, people look at gross profit, 42.2%. They think these customers are making money for them. But in fact, and this is, again, a very real situation, is they're actually destroying value. And you can see that the profit has gone from 9.9% down to negative 41.4%. So once you've got this data in this kind of format and you're looking at it, your next question might be around, show me the cost for the customers. And you can then have analytics to go in and say, well, let's drill down into other costs. If we had to look at rent, for instance, that 742,000 portion of rent over there is actually, that's how it's been spread across all your customers. So it might look like a lot of detail, but you know that your model is sound and that you can actually track exactly what your customers are costing per expense type. But what we also do is we make sure that we can track it by activity type. So we understand that the costs are being driven because we're following up on debtors more often than what we should, or we sending consultants out to that site more often, or we over servicing those clients, and that's what's driving the profit. So that's what's important. So how do we get to that data? So what we do is we look at your sales ledger and your general ledger. We're looking for direct, we call it real revenue in the Profit First community. It's kind of like gross profit, and you can pick that number up from your general ledger and your sales ledger. You're going to need the data from your sales ledger, and then all your other expenses are typically sitting in your general ledger. And what you're trying to do is allocate the gross profit down to your products and services. Many systems do that by default, but watch out, they often do it at a standard profit level, not at an actual profit. So part of what we do in our modeling is we make sure that when we allocate down, it's actually actual profit, gross profit, and not standard profit. And then we allocate it down to the customers as well, because if a customer's buying a product or service, they will inherit those costs and those revenues. And then what's left over, what we do is we build allocation rules. So we will take an item and we'll say, how do we allocate that expense down to the products and services or down to the customers? And part of the magic, we use the time-based ABC method from Harvard. What that does is it says, look at any customer-facing activities and quantify how many minutes it takes you to service the customers, whether you're collecting cash or giving a quote or doing a site visit or handling a complaint. Those are all customer-facing activities. And that's the basis on which we allocate down to the customer level. So that's in broadly just a quick view of how we get the data to look like this and be able to measure customer profitability per customer. Just one last thing is when you start optimizing your business, because this is what you do up front in a project, but early on in the project, what you want to do is find some of the customers that you know are loss makers, and you can ask serious questions around these customers. Are they the right customers? Often you can just increase prices and you can take customers out of the red and into the green and solve the problem very simply. And if the customer's not taking those price increases, it might be not worth servicing them. You've got to be willing to make that call. And lastly, if you do have to exit you cannot keep the same cost base. You've got to shrink your cost base. Maybe you get cheaper rent, or you find a way of reducing your own cost base. Otherwise, you're just going to make more of your profitable customers unprofitable if you don't change that cost base. So hopefully this little demonstration has been helpful. Thanks.